Have you ever seen an interview that made an entire room go silent? Not just quiet, frozen. Wait until you hear what happened the night Representative Jasmine Crockett sat across from former President Donald Trump. Live on national television. What began as an ordinary policy discussion turned into a moment that people are still talking about. The lights were bright, the cameras steady. You could almost hear the heartbeat of the room. The host smiled politely, introducing both guests. Trump gave his familiar wave, confident and casual. Jasmine Crockett sat tall, calm, professional, and ready. She wasn't there to argue. She was there to explain. In a clear, steady voice, she began describing how a new economic proposal might hurt working-class families. People earning a paycheck, paying bills, raising kids, just trying to stay afloat. Her words were simple, direct, and easy to follow. She talked about groceries, rent, and medicine, things every American understands. The audience listened closely. Some nodded, some took notes. It felt like a classroom where everyone actually wanted to learn. Then, the unexpected happened. From the other side of the table, the former president leaned forward. His movement was quick, enough to make the host pause mid-sentence. He interrupted, voice louder than before. "She's not even American." The sentence hit the air like thunder. For a second, nobody breathed. The audience froze. The cameras didn't move. Even the host's face went tight, unsure what to do next. But Jasmine didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't look angry. Instead, she turned toward him and spoke slowly, every word measured. "That's a serious thing to say, Mr. President. Can you show any proof of that right now?" The room stayed silent. You could hear the sound of a camera motor turning. Trump didn't answer right away. He repeated his words instead, this time louder, more forceful. "She's not American. She doesn't represent you. Still no evidence, still no facts." Jasmine stayed calm. Her hands rested on the desk. She looked him in the eye and said, "You just told millions of people that I don't belong here." "That's a big claim. Now please prove it." The audience shifted. A few murmurs. Some heads turned toward the host as if asking, "Is this really happening?" Trump spoke again, repeating the same point, but the energy had changed. People were no longer nodding with him. They were watching her, waiting to see what she would do next. Jasmine took a breath. She didn't rush. She let the moment breathe, let the silence grow heavy. Then, with calm clarity, she said, "Mr. President, when leaders run out of facts, they often turn to attacks. That doesn't help the American people. They deserve honesty, not insults." The studio reacted quietly, a soft wave of applause, hesitant at first, then stronger. Trump's jaw tightened. He looked toward the host as if to move on. But Jasmine continued, still composed. "Every person in this country deserves respect. We can disagree on policy, but we shouldn't question someone's place in America because of how they look." Her tone stayed polite, but her words carried weight. The host nodded slightly, sensing the importance of what had just been said. Cameras zoomed closer. Trump started to respond, voice raised, defending his position. He talked about patriotism, loyalty, and the right to question others. But something had shifted. The more he spoke, the more the audience looked back at Jasmine. She listened quietly, not interrupting once. When he finished, she said softly, "I love this country. I've worked for it my entire life. That's why I'm here, to make it better." Her calmness stood in sharp contrast to his intensity. Viewers could feel it through the screen. Two very different energies colliding on live TV. The host tried to lighten the moment, steering back toward the policy discussion. But the exchange had already taken root. People on social media began typing, posting clips, replaying her words. Within minutes, the phrase proved it was trending. Back in the studio, Jasmine regained the floor. She outlined again how the proposed bill could raise prices for middle-class families. Her voice remained steady, She spoke about seniors on fixed incomes, about parents struggling to pay for health care, about veterans who served and now faced rising costs. Every sentence was short, every idea clear. You didn't need a degree in economics to understand what she meant, and that was her strength. Trump leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. He waited for his turn, occasionally shaking his head. When the host offered him the mic, he smiled faintly and said, "She talks nice, but she doesn't get it." That drew a few laughs from the crowd, but Jasmine didn't let it slide. She smiled too, just slightly, and said, "Sometimes understanding people's struggles isn't about talking louder. Mr. President, it's about listening." The laughter stopped. The air changed again. You could see Trump's jaw tighten. He wasn't used to being challenged so calmly. He spoke again, this time about jobs and leadership. He listed accomplishments, numbers, promises, the usual rhythm of his rallies. Jasmine waited, letting him finish. When he paused, she said quietly, "Jobs and numbers matter, yes, but people's lives matter more. Policies aren't just math, they're meals, medicine, and hope." The host leaned in. Even he seemed caught by her tone. The conversation, once tense, had become deeply human. People at home could relate. It wasn't about sides anymore. It was about reality. Minutes passed. Then Trump interrupted again, sharper this time. "You don't know what it's like to lead a country." Jasmine didn't blink. "Maybe not," she said, "but I know what it's like to serve one." The audience reacted instantly. Soft applause, a few cheers. The tension broke just slightly, replaced by something else, respect. Trump looked down, then back up, eyes narrowing. He tried to pivot to another topic, but Jasmine stayed on message, summarizing the real-world impact of the policy. Her sentences were short, crisp, and personal. She talked about families choosing between gas and groceries. She described a veteran calling her office, crying because medical costs had doubled. Her words painted pictures. The studio grew quiet again, but this time it was a thoughtful quiet. People weren't shocked. They were moved. When she finished, the host nodded and said softly, "Thank you, Representative." "That was powerful." Trump leaned toward his mic, smiling tightly. He tried to regain control with humor. "Well, she's got good stories. I'll give her that." Jasmine didn't laugh. She simply replied, "They're not stories. Mr. President, they're lives." The audience applauded again, louder this time. Even the host seemed taken aback by the emotion in the room. Cameras zoomed in on Jasmine's face, calm, steady, unshaken. She wasn't performing, she was speaking from experience. That's when the energy in the studio began to change for good. Viewers at home could feel it too. What had started as confrontation had become a moment of truth, and just when it seemed to settle, something unexpected happened again. Trump leaned forward, elbows on the desk, voice low but firm. "So you're saying I don't care about Americans?" The question hung heavy. Jasmine met his eyes. Her response was quiet, almost gentle. "I'm saying that caring isn't about winning. It's about listening, Mr. President. And tonight, America is listening." The host looked between them, sensing the gravity of the moment. The audience leaned in once more, hanging on her words. Trump opened his mouth to reply, but the time was up. The producer signaled to cut to commercial. The lights dimmed slightly. The cameras pulled back. The host thanked both guests, but the energy in the room didn't fade. People whispered. Some clapped quietly. Others simply stared, processing what they'd just seen. Outside the studio, social media exploded. Clips were uploaded, shared, replayed thousands of times within minutes. People weren't arguing about policies anymore. They were talking about composure, courage, and calm. They were talking about Jasmine Crockett. As the credits rolled, one comment online summed it up best. She didn't shout. She didn't attack. She just spoke truth and made the world listen. But the night wasn't over, because what happened After that commercial break would leave the audience, stunned once again, and it would change the tone of the entire conversation. The commercial break ended. People at home leaned closer to their screens. No one wanted to miss what might happen next. The host smiled, trying to bring the mood back down. "Welcome back, everyone," he said lightly. But the smiles in the studio were tight. You could feel the unease through the air. Trump sat straight, chin high, hands clasped on the desk. Jasmine Crockett returned the same calm stare she had before. Two people, two very different kinds of confidence. The host spoke first. "Representative Crockett, before the break you mentioned how the proposal could raise prices for middle-class families. Could you finish that thought?" Jasmine nodded. Her voice was soft but clear enough to cut through the tension. "Of course. This bill would make life harder for millions of people who already feel forgotten. It adds costs, not relief. That's why I'm concerned." She paused, letting her words sink in. Her tone was steady, like a teacher explaining a hard truth. Trump leaned slightly forward. He wasn't smiling. He said, "You make it sound like everything I did was bad. But people were better off under my administration." "Everyone knows that." Jasmine didn't argue. She said, "Some did feel that way, yes. But many didn't. The cost of living still rose and wages didn't keep up. I'm here to talk about what's next, not just what's past," the audience murmured quietly. People could sense her balance. She wasn't attacking, just reasoning. The host tried to keep order, but the crowd had already shifted again, more supportive, more vocal. Someone clapped. Then more joined in. Trump's jaw tightened. He said, "You're making it sound like I don't care about the middle class. That's wrong. I've done more for them than anyone." Jasmine didn't interrupt. She let him speak. Then she said, "If caring means action, then let's act. Right now, on live television, can we both agree to protect working families from any policy that raises their costs?" It was a trap and an invitation at once. The audience held its breath. Trump hesitated. His eyes narrowed slightly. Finally, he said, "We'll see what the final version looks like." Jasmine nodded slowly. "So no promise tonight?" Trump started to reply, but the crowd reacted first. Soft murmurs. Whispers. People understood what had just happened. He hadn't said yes. He hadn't said no. He had dodged. Jasmine closed the folder. "That's what I mean," she said quietly. Truth shouldn't have to wait for permission. The audience erupted in applause. Even some members of the production team smiled behind their cameras. The host tried to calm the room. "All right," he said. "Let's remember we're here for discussion, not a rally." But it was too late. The moment had already taken on a life of its own. Trump straightened, forced a smile, and said, "You're good at speeches. Maybe you should try running the country someday," Jasmine replied without missing a beat. "I already am helping run it, Mr. President, just not alone. I'm part of the people who make democracy work." The line drew another burst of applause. Trump's smile faded. He looked to the host, then back at her. "You're very confident," he said. Jasmine nodded once. "Confidence is easier when you're standing on truth." That line went viral within minutes, but no one knew that yet, not in the studio, not even her. For now, the air was still charged. The host tried one last question. "What do you want people to take away from tonight?" Jasmine looked directly into the camera. "I want them to remember this moment," she said, "because the way leaders treat truth and each other decides what kind of country we become." Her voice softened,